Good afternoon and welcome to From Where We Are, stories of news and culture through the lens of USC in Southern California. I'm Taylor Mills, coming to you live from Studio B in USC's Annenberg Media Center.
And I'm Sudarshan Ramabadran. It's Monday, November 29th. On today's show, USC RA is organizing a strike, the legacy of Virgil Abloh, and the ban on plastic utensils. All that and more from where we are.
But first, these news headlines from Emily Fu.
The Omicron variant, first discovered in South Africa earlier this month, is quickly spreading to countries around the globe, from Australia to Canada. Starting today, the U.S. will restrict travel from South Africa and 7 other African countries. The variant has not yet been detected in the U.S. President Biden offered some reassurance this morning.
This variant is a cause for concern, not a cause for panic. We have the best vaccine in the world, the best medicines, the best scientists, and we're learning more every single day. And we'll fight this variant with scientific and knowledgeable actions and speed, not chaos and confusion.
The CEO of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, stepped down today. He said he believes Twitter is ready to move on from its founders and didn't give any more details on why he decided to resign. 45-year-old Jack Dorsey will be replaced by the company's current Chief Technology Officer, Parag Agrawal. USC has hired Lincoln Riley as its next head football coach. Riley has been called the brightest young football leader in the country and a 38-year-old offensive guru. Riley comes to USC from Oklahoma, where he guided the Sooners to 4 Big 12 titles and won 85% of his games in 5 seasons there. Those are some of today's headlines. For Annenberg Media, I'm Emily Fu.
It's an exciting day for USC football fans. Just last night, the program announced a new head coach at the helm. Just hours after his loss to Oklahoma State, head coach Lincoln Riley signed with the Trojans.
Here to talk about it is Annenberg Media sports reporters Samuel Reno and Eli Kleinman. Guys, thank you guys for being here.
Yeah, it's exciting
Thanks
to
for
be
having
here.
us.
You talked about it in your write-up last night. Why is Riley the most significant head coach in USC history?
I think it's because USC not only got a head coach with great experience coming into USC. Obviously, we've already heard his credentials at Oklahoma. He led them to 3 playoff trips. But more importantly, USC's hired great coaches in the past, but none have been as successful before their tenure at USC like Lincoln Riley. You had Pete Carroll, who led USC to national championships here in the early 2000s, but he was their 5th or 6th choice. Lincoln Riley was their first choice, although many people didn't know it till before he was hired. But it is such a great hire. It sparked so much excitement yesterday that I think without a doubt it's USC's best hire in its history.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's also the recruiting prowess, right? To get players in, you have to prove you can send players to the pros. And he's done that better than almost anybody other than maybe Nick Saban over the last 5 years. Think of the quarterbacks with Hurts and Mayfield and Murray and players across the board, Kenneth Murray, CeeDee Lamb, Hollywood Brown. If you want to go play in the NFL, you play for Lincoln Riley, and that's why this is so huge for this USC program.
So if we can ask you, what challenges does Riley face with the current squad?
I mean, if you watched anything this year, it's not exactly, he's not coming into a perfect situation. I mean, 4-7 right now, and then a meaningless game on Saturday will determine where it ultimately ends. But there's discipline issues. They're penalized a lot, and a lot of it's just, it seems to be like get a 12-man on the field call every week, and there's things like that need to be cleaned up, certainly. And I think he has the track record too, and the staff that he'll bring in I think will certainly help.
And then I think going off that, there are position groups that are already not playing at the elite level that is expected at USC, and they're going to lose talent this year, especially the offensive line. I think that's the biggest one. You have 5 starters that aren't playing to the level people expect from USC offensive lines. I mean, USC has multiple running backs who have won Heisman trophies, and while those are talented running backs, the offensive line opens the holes for them up. You can't win a Heisman trophy as a running back without a good offensive line. USC doesn't have that offensive line now. You're going to lose one in Jimmins, maybe a couple more offensive linemen. Lincoln Riley's going to have to replace him, and there's ways to do that with the transfer portal now, but it's not going to be that easy. An offensive line is really, you need a good offensive line if you want to be a title contender in college football. So that'll be a challenge in year one, maybe even year two for Lincoln Riley as he starts to bring in new players on this team.
Now, Riley wasn't the only hire last night. What other coaches will be joining him at spring training?
He's added a defensive coordinator. He brought his defensive coordinator over from Oklahoma. That's Alex Grinch. People aren't so excited about Grinch as much as they are Riley, and obviously defensive coordinator doesn't get you as excited, but because Oklahoma's given up a lot of points. But I think people need to go back to when Grinch was at Washington State and then Ohio State. He was considered one of the best defensive coordinators in the country, was up for the top assistant award 4 different times. He's talented. And then Lincoln Riley is bringing his receivers coach, his strength coach, his deputy of his staff, and then also his offensive line coach. Those are all guys who are great recruiters. So if you want to be able to turn over the program and bring in top talent quickly, that's where it all starts. Lincoln Riley is a huge part of that. He recruits, but the assistants are just as important in recruiting as the head coach.
Yeah, absolutely. And that defense, I think it's sort of unfair to paint the OU defense as poor, because we've seen that a lot in the Big 12 where offenses just put up numbers. And that OU defense has been talented, extremely talented at times across all the skill positions and on that defensive front. And so the numbers may not have been there in terms of points allowed over the years, but I think he's coached some talented defenses, and I think that's the most important thing.
Also, quickly to wrap up this immersive capsule, why do you think he came to USC?
It's not the SEC. I'll take that as the first one. I mean, it's no secret that they jumped to the SEC, and who wouldn't want to play, or why would you want to play Alabama and play LSU and all of these schools every year? Or you could come out here and be it. You are the team to beat in the Pac-12. Your path to the playoff is much easier. You're in a recruiting hotbed. It made a lot of sense, I think, and I'm sure the money will back that up.
That's a huge reason. Absolutely. It might even be the biggest reason. But another reason is the resources that are now available at USC. At Oklahoma, he had a small recruiting staff. It was mostly just the coaching staff itself doing recruiting. And that's what USC was like over the last 20 years, up until Mike Bohn, the athletic director, was hired. It just was not a program that was built to win, and it won because of where it's located and the recruits that were here. But over the last couple of years, that started to change. USC has built the infrastructure needed to have a winning season, have a championship contender.
Well, Sam and Eli, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
It's the time of the season when love runs high.
Not only have there been huge changes in the sport world, but sports has also been making huge differences in people's lives. One nonprofit strives to bring low-income youth together through soccer. Joseph Ballweg sits down with the founder of the Academia de Fútbol Juvenil Amatense, or AFJA for short.
Stephen Cruz is the founder of the nonprofit organization AFJA. He spent his summers with his grandparents in Canton Los Amates, El Salvador, where he noticed the immense differences between the United States and El Salvador. His experiences in Central America motivated him to create social change through soccer for others.
I do remember at a very early age being impacted by the disparity that existed between the kids that I grew up with in LA, my friends and family here in LA, and then I would go to El Salvador and I would see this huge disparity that kids my age were working in the cornfield.
For much of his youth, Cruz would visit El Salvador, where he learned to love soccer and connect with people over the sport.
You know, I like baseball growing up. So I played a lot of baseball or like Pop Warner football and just kind of like American sports. And then when I go down there, it's like, man, that isn't around. It's like people play soccer, people play football.
As he grew older and graduated from USC, he never forgot the connections he made and the privilege he had growing up in the United States.
I'm one person's decision away from being those kids, right? Because my mom immigrated from there during a civil war, during these crazy times. And I could have very well be the kids working in the cornfields doing the same stuff.
According to Cruz, in El Salvador, many kids drop out before second grade because they must help their impoverished families by working labor jobs. He wanted to help the kids in Canton Los Amates and decided to create a GoFundMe page with a $500 goal.
ROI is a term that you use in business school all the time. What's your return on the investment? How good is your ROI? Well, I would pitch people a return on impact. How much impact can we have on your investment?
It took just 24 hours to reach that $500 goal. That's when Cruz saw this goal could be so much more.
It just took off from there. You know, people were like, hey, I got soccer gear. Like, instead of just money, like, do you take soccer gear? And I'm like, yeah, I could do that. I had my garage and my closet and my mom's closet and garage full of soccer gear, cones, jerseys, like anything that you could think of. We just had on like a 1-2 month turnaround.
Cruz decided to take this gear to the place he spent his summers in El Salvador. There, he asked the local school's principal what recreational gear the school had.
You want to see what we have for sports equipment? Okay. She's like, hold on. She goes into the back, comes out with this, I can't even call it a ball. It's a sphere of thread that used to be a soccer ball at one point, but over the years, it is now just a round sphere that rolls, and that's what they have.
When Cruz pulled out the tons of gear he brought over from Los Angeles, the principal was shocked.
Pulled out the bags, and I'm like, this is some of the stuff that I brought. And she just gets kind of watery-eyed. She's just like, oh my God. She's like, and this is just for free? I'm like, yeah, this is for you guys.
This trip began Cruz's mission to create opportunity for kids across Central America. Since 2017, AFJA has donated over 3,000 soccer balls and 2,500 pairs of cleats. He has also opened 5 soccer academies across Central America, his first in Canton Los Amates, where he spent his summers as a child. Cruz continues to spread social change in Central America through the love of soccer. For Annenberg Media, I'm Joseph Balawick.
Fascinating soccer story there. Taylor, do you remember your RA during freshman year?
I do, actually. I remember how cool she was. If she's listening, hi.
So tell me, what was her job exactly?
You know, there are a lot of official jobs that come with being an RA, but what I remember most were her unofficial actions. She brought us food, she made us door tags, asked how we were doing. You know, she really made my dorm home.
I'm going to ask you the most redundant question, but it should be asked. Should they be paid their dues?
Well, that is the question of the week here on campus.
USC RAs are in uproar over decreased financial compensation and are taking matters into their own hands this week. Myriam Alcala spoke with several RAs and students to get their perspectives on the situation.
RAs, students who serve residents in USC housing, have complained about unfair compensation. USC's financial aid office took away the cost of room and board from the students' tuition when considering grant aid. This resulted in a decrease of thousands of dollars in aid. The USC RA Organizing Committee organized a strike that will begin December 3rd at 6 p.m. During the strike, RAs will not report to work until their financial aid is fixed. Carol Outlaw, a junior and RA at Gateway Apartments, shared she feels it's unfair that RAs work over 12 hours per week and don't receive much in return.
As RAs, like we're just really not compensated at all for a lot of the time that we put into everything it is that we do.
Outlaw shared she was physically pushed by a resident while on call in the middle of the night last month, yet received little support in response to the assault.
I did receive a call from my supervisor, of course, who checked in on me, but the only thing they recommended me to do was to go to CMH, or I think it's like the Center for Mental Health on campus, to just seek free resources.
She added that although she really cares about her residents, the state of her job has now inclined her to take part in the strike.
If residential education or USC housing, whoever's in charge, refuses to give us any form of support and refuses to listen to our claims, then we are going to take the initiative to strike.
Junior Sofia Radulovic is an RA in Webb Tower who is helping organize the strike. She shared that she has now had to take out loans to help cover the cost of attending USC. She noted that the job is appealing to low-income students, but has now forced them into a position where they are acquiring late fees and facing obstacles when registering for classes. Students' reactions to the organization of the strike have been mixed. Some students, like freshman Webb Tower resident Hagar Edley, are frustrated to hear that the RAs are not being compensated fairly. She shared that she knows RAs have been upset about their situation, and rightfully so.
I mean, in a sense, they feel like they're being exploited, and they deserve to be able to speak out on that and to, be treated fairly.
Other students, particularly those who don't know much about RA compensation, are not entirely convinced that the uproar is necessary. Here is freshman Fisher Johnson's take.
From what I understand, they get free room and board and a meal plan. And I think that's pretty fair because I know that my parents are definitely paying a lot of money for my room and meal plan. So I don't know if they want an extra salary, if that's what they're looking for. I don't know a lot about it, but I feel like they get compensated in other ways besides just an actual salary, I guess.
However students may feel about RA compensation, the strike is set to take place this Friday. In addition to fair compensation, RAs are demanding a seat at the table in higher-up meetings and a subpoena of $10,370 per semester. For Annenberg Media, I'm Myriam Alcala.
USC also released a statement to Annenberg Media. They said that most financial aid packages for RAs were finalized by July 15th, but they encourage RAs to work directly with the financial aid office before accepting their position. For more information on USC's statement, read the full story at uscannenbergmedia.com.
I'm Taylor Mills. We're glad you're with us from Where We Are.
And I'm Sudarshan Ramabadran. It's 16 minutes past the hour. Coming up, the legacy of Virgil Abloh. Stay with us.
Pioneering American fashion designer, artist, and entrepreneur Virgil Abloh died yesterday after a 2-year battle with a rare, aggressive form of cancer. He was 41 years old. Abloh made history as Louis Vuitton's first black artistic director. Daniel Marable reports.
Virgil Abloh founded his own brand, the cult streetwear label Off-White, in 2012. He rose quickly, collaborating with Nike, Evian, IKEA, Levi's, Jimmy Choo, Champion, and Timberland. He designed spaces for fashion with top architects. He was an artist and a DJ who worked with Kanye West and Jay-Z, and had a great impact on all kinds of culture. Tate Schmergel is co-president of USC MASH, an online publication on the intersection of business and fashion. He says Abloh was a true trailblazer.
His entire philosophy is not about creating, it's about repurposing and recontextualizing. So I think that in that way, his impact on art as a whole, and particularly fashion, is taking objects that already exist, and taking pre-constructed art, pre-constructed notions, and putting your own mark on them.
The chairman of Louis Vuitton, Bernard Arnault, who named Abloh menswear creative director in 2018, said following Abloh's death, Virgil was not only a genius designer, a visionary, he was also a man with a beautiful soul and great wisdom. Again, Tate Schmergel, co-president of USC MASH.
I think Abloh in particular left an immense mark on just the way that fashion labels regard their creations, and also just in a more global sense, diversity. He was named as one of the most influential people in 2018 because of he was the first creative director and the first styling director of color at an LVMH brand, and also just globally in terms of fashion in over 100 years.
In an Instagram post, Virgil Abloh's wife quoted him as saying, "Everything I do is for the 17-year-old version of myself, in the power of art to inspire future generations." For Annenberg Media, I'm Daniel Marable.
Did you notice something missing at Illy Cafe or Seeds? Those plastic utensils aren't out on the counter anymore. If you want them, you got to ask for them, and that's part of a new LA City plan. Larger Mystery has more.
Your next takeout bag may not contain spoons, forks, or your favorite condiment containers. According to a law that went into effect this week, food and beverage facilities in Los Angeles, with more than 26 employees, are restricted from giving out disposable items such as plastic straws, forks, and lids to the customers. The law bans readily available disposables, but customers can still request and get the plastic. USC undergrad student Alexandria G thinks this is a good idea, but does not think that banning disposables will solve the problem of plastic pollution.
I don't think I think it'll make us more like eco-friendly, but I also think it's just another way for USC to make themselves look better without actually trying to solve the problem.
Others agree that even a small step is a step in the right direction. Lamont Stiff works at Dulce at the USC Village.
I think it's a good idea. I don't know how helpful it is. I don't think it really stops so many people from using straws and forks, but it's a little bit of a deterrent, which makes it a little better for our environment. So I'm with it.
If enough people are with it, it might make a difference, says Ioanni Dekwasi, sitting on a sofa outside in the village.
I think it would be effective. I mean, not everyone's going to do it, but as long as some people start doing it, it's small change. So eventually it might catch on.
Sustainability expert and professor at USC, Robin Craig, sheds light on the effectiveness of the new law.
The way you set up your law is we're not automatically going to give you plastic utensils, plastic bags, unless you ask for it. Everything in behavioral psychology says that's the way to set up a law to actually reduce the use, because people have to positively do something to get the plastic that normally isn't just handed out. Will it solve the entire plastics problem? Obviously not, but will it start to make a dent? I think it might.
Computer science and business administration major Hannah Kashawi wonders if people will comply with the new law. She saw a similar issue in an earlier ban just on plastic straws.
I think it will make a dent in the plastic use for single-use plastic if it's followed, but I also think it'll be really difficult to follow.
All food and beverage facilities are expected to follow the law by April 2022. Assistant Vice President of USC Auxiliary Services, Dirk de Jong, said that USC Hospitality is aware of the ordinance and has made changes to its operations to ensure compliance. For Annenberg Media, I'm Lajja Mistry.
If you've ever wondered about the origins of curious words and phrases, here's Eileen Chen with today's root source, Katia Kitanga.
When we talk about climate change, we tend to use emotive words like fight, combat, and crisis. But there is one word that offers an alternative to these highly charged terms, a word that shows how we can help, and that word is Katia Kitanga. Katia Kitanga means human caretakers. It highlights the cultivation of an intimate relationship with nature. The word is native to indigenous New Zealanders, the Maori. Katia Kitanga was publicly introduced to the English-speaking world in 2018, when New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern delivered a keynote speech at the New York City Climate Week.
I'd like to begin with a word often used in New Zealand that you may not until now at least have heard. It's the word kaitiakitanga, and in my mind it captures the sentiment of why we are all here today.
In the Maori language, katiaki means caretaker, and tangata, humans. The combination katiakitanga means the guardianship of nature. So what's an example of katiakitanga? Well, if you care about the Los Angeles River and you join local environmental groups to clean it, you are practicing katiakitanga. In the Maori's perspectives of the natural world, people's way of knowing, being, and doing are all connected with the Earth Mother, the Sky Father, and their many children. Katiakitanga means to safeguard and manage natural resources for present and future generations. The Maori consider this a duty of the Earth's inhabitants.
We are kaitiaki, lovers of this land. Give us your hand and we'll make our stand.
And maybe we are catching on. Last month, the word was officially added to the Oxford English Dictionary. Dictionary editor Trish Stewart wrote in a blog post that Katia Gitanga reminds us we all have a part to play in creating a sustainable future. And maybe the Maori word Katia Gitanga can help direct us away from an overly emotional reaction to climate change and help us focus more on what we can do to heal.
We did real damage to Earth's thermostat.
For Annenberg Media, I'm Eileen Chen.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. We didn't mean to be so mean. All you had to do is keep the forest green and the air and water clean.
Katia Kitanga.
Katia
Taylor.
Kitanga.
And it's fascinating because it's such a contemporary word, even though ancient, that how we should live in harmony with nature.
And it's fascinating that it came after the story about the ban on plastic utensils. I don't know if that's the best example of Katia Kitanga, but it's interesting how it's in a bureaucratic way.
I think there was a fascinating example. If you want to save the LA River, Katia Kitanga. So Taylor, tell me, switching, what are your holiday plans?
I'm going to go home to my family. I'm really fortunate to do that. I'm going to go see my dog, who you guys, I actually haven't talked about it on this show, which is crazy. But his name is Nolan, and I'm smiling behind my mask. I know you can't see it, but what about you, Sudarshan?
Something similar. I'm going to see my family, my sister after 5 years, and my nephew right after he was born. He's 2. I haven't seen him, so I'm going to see him.
Precious.
Pretty excited. Video calling him every day, but this is it. Holidays, nephew time.
Yeah. But you have to get finals. You have to get through finals before you see your nephew, correct?
Yes. And off to see him in San Jose. Looking forward to that.
Yeah. I have to get through my finals as well. I know a lot of our viewers are USC students, and so we are wishing you the best of luck with whatever you got going on. I know I have a couple of essays and maybe a test I haven't started studying for, but that's after this show. And so looking back at the semester, this is actually our last show as radio host here on Monday. Sudarshan, what was your favorite?
I didn't have any, when I applied for this, I didn't know Celine or Pauline or Val would call us to host shows here, but they've been gracious to judge us and say, look, this is your show, treat it as your show and go on with it.
We try to bring as much as our own personality in this, and I know
Yes.
I've gotten to love Sudarshan, guys. He's my homie. Like, these are the people I cannot wait to see every single week. This is honestly my favorite day. This is my favorite thing to do, and so I hope you guys have really felt our energy here. And yeah, that's all we have time for today on today's From Where We Are. Again, like I said earlier, this is actually our last show as Monday host. So how are you feeling, Sudarshan?
I'm actually very senti, but also stoked about all that we have covered. Like you said, news, culture, sports, and things like ancient and contemporary words like Katia Kitanga. What about you?
Yeah, and Mondays will not be the same. I hope our viewers and listeners enjoyed our stories as much as we did. But I cannot forget about our super production team, and so I'm going to go ahead and read them off one last time. Celine, Mendiola, and Val Diaz produced our show today. Val Diaz is running our soundboard. Daniel Marable and Myriam Alcala were our team members. And Derek Renfro composed our theme music.
We're also streaming live on KXSC. Follow KXSC at kxsc.org/listen and on YouTube at Annenberg Radio News. Subscribe to From Where We Are on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And if you're looking for more news, be sure to download Annie, Annenberg's news app. Look for us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Annenberg Media. I'm Sudarshan Ramabadran.
Guys, happy holidays. Thank you so much for joining us every week. We are incredibly honored to be your host for Monday here in Studio B at USC Annenberg Media Center. I'm Taylor Mills. From all of us at Annenberg Radio, wherever you are, we hope you'll join us again from Where We Are.